So I didn't make tea for y'all today. Sorry about that. But I do have some fun. Yeah, it is too hot for tea. Exactly. Yeah. So I was thinking. I was thinking of making a couple of the teas of the plants that we're going to be talking about. But yeah, no one wants that stuff. All right. So what we're doing today is, so I started out. We have a lot of plants in our garden that are coming into the late summer flower. So we have early spring flowering plants. We have early spring flowering plants, late summer flowering plants, and then fall. There's this progression of flowers. So there's just a really nice range of them. A lot of plants. So this started out as a lot of the plants are in the Asteraceae family. That's the sunflower or the daisy family. And so I was going to do a comparison of plants of the Asteraceae family. But there were other flowers that wanted to come play too. So it's primarily plants of the Asteraceae family with some other friends thrown in for good measure. But we'll look at kind of the chemistry and the function of flowers. So we'll start with the Asteraceae family plants. For most of the history of botany, for most of the history of what's called taxonomy. Taxonomy is the understanding of the naming of species, right? So the kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species, progression of the names of plants is called taxonomy. So the taxonomic nomenclature of plants allows us to identify families of plants, right? That's one of the ways that we classify, and that's that has long been associated with the structure, the structure of the flower primarily. And so for plants of the Asteraceae family, plants were used to be called the Compositae family, because the flowers are composites. They're made up of a number of little flowers. And if you've not seen this, this is really, really cool. So I'm going to give you all an inflorescence. This is not a flower. A flower is a single reproductive structure of a plant. This is not a flower. This is an inflorescence, which is a gathering of all sorts of flowers. And you can do this if you go and you find whatever Asteraceae family flower. So you can also use dandelions for this, right? Dandelion is another Asteraceae flower. But this is just kind of the very typical structure of an Asteraceae. So we see two types of flowers. We see disc flowers, the yellow disc, the center there. Disc flowers are one of the types of flowers. And then we have ray flowers. Hi, Kat. Let me give you a little bouquet. We're looking at flowers of the garden right now, and we're talking about Asteraceae inflorescences. And the fact that this isn't one flower, but a number, there's dozens and dozens of flowers structured right here. So if we look along the outside, we see what we think of as the petals, right? Those are called ray flowers, and each one of those little white petals is a whole flower structure in and of itself. So if you pull one of those back, and if you had a little magnifying glass, you could look in and see a complete genetic structure for a flower in each one of those rays. And the same for each of the little tiny flowers in the disc. That disc isn't one flower. If you pull it apart, you'll see that it's made up of dozens and dozens of dozens, really hundreds and thousands of flowers there. Right. So it's kind of fun to pull these apart and think of exactly how many flowers. And now if you think about the fact that dandelions they have all ray flowers, no disc flowers. And when they go into flower, they produce the little puffball, right? The little white puffball, typical dandelion seed head. And that has, again, dozens and dozens and dozens of seeds. Every one of those seeds is going to create a single plant, because every one of those seeds comes from a complete flower here. So Compositae is the old plant name. The Asteraceae is the new plant name, and there's a certain, sometimes with certain plants, it's really helpful to know in herbalism of the family that a plant belongs to, because when a plant belongs to a certain family, if there are characteristics of that family that contribute primarily to the medicinal effects, then we can understand, even before we use the plant, even before we start studying with the plant, we understand stuff about the plant. So what are thank you, Kat, grabbing a chair for you.
Sorry.
Oh, no, you're fine. So can you think of plant families that have that? Those of you who are somewhat familiar with herbs, we've talked about some families that have characteristics. Can you think of familial characteristics?
Of the Asteraceae?
Of any of the other families, not of the Asteraceae, but any other families that you think, oh, if I know that it's in this family, I know certain things about the plant.
The Malvaceae would be moistening.
Yeah, classic, exactly. Anything in that family, anything in the mallow family is going to be moistened. It's going to have the slime of mallow and okra and all that. Absolutely. So you know something about the plant. You know, oh, this is going to be a whole bunch of chemistry and action. Absolutely. The rose family plant is always going to be astringent. It's always going to be cooling and tonifying to tissues, right? If you know that the plant is in that family, we know something. Well, we don't have that familial characteristics in Asteraceae. There are some things that tend to be there, though, particularly in the flowers. So one of the things that the Asteraceae family tends to have is what are called sesquiterpenes. Now, people sometimes, different brains deal with different information differently. And some brains, when you're hit with a whole bunch of letters all at once, the brain kind of freezes up and goes, that's a whole bunch of letters and I'm not going to compute. Some brains do that with numbers. Some brains do that with, sounds, right? But if we break things down, especially with the increase in understanding of cannabis chemistry, right? Everyone knows about terpenes, right? Terpenes are compounds in plants, and terpenes have different size structures. We have tiny little terpenes. Those are monoterpenes. Monoterpenes are single terpenes. Those are tiny little aromatic things, and those are generally the essential oils in plants. A lot of essential oils, lavender and eucalyptus and tea tree and all of that. When you smell those things, oftentimes you're smelling monoterpenes. And then we go up in size. We have diterpenes and triterpenes. Sesqua means kind of a lot of, a whole bunch of terpenes, right? So sesquiterpenes are just a long chain of stuff in plants, and they generally tend to be very bitter. And they often tend to be medicinal, and they're oftentimes the things in Asteraceae family. The Asteraceae family is the only family that makes sesquiterpenes, and they tend to be pretty important compounds. So oh, hi, I'm sorry, folks, I didn't, Tuco and Teresa, hello. So the sesquiterpenes in this plant, for example, this is a plant called feverfew. So feverfew, does anyone know, has anyone used feverfew medicinally? Yes. How have you used feverfew?
For migraines.
For migraines.
Yeah, in a tincture form or tea form, generally.
Yeah, migraines in tincture or tea. Thank you, Tuco. Me too. Yes, absolutely. That is a classic use of it. So this is a plant that is very strongly associated with not just headaches and not just inflammatory conditions, but specifically migraines. Although it's helpful to remember that it is generally an anti-inflammatory, a very cooling anti-inflammatory. Migraines tend to be a very reactive, hot, inflammatory condition. And so the sesquiterpene compounds in feverfew are the compounds that are considered to be medicinally active. Now, the important thing, you'll always find feverfew. This is a great plant to grow in your garden because it's just as cute as can be. It's adorable and it flowers abundantly and it self-flowers. So once you have a plant growing, it's just you're gonna find it just popping up everywhere. And the first time you'll notice it is because you have these happy little flowers coming up. There's just no downside to that. The medicine, however, is not in the flowers. And oftentimes when we look at, we were talking about this about hawthorn, a lot of times when we look at a plant and we see kind of what we consider to be the ultimate representation of that plant, right? Sometimes it's a fruit if it's a fruiting plant, and it's a flower if it's a flowering plant, but we tend to think that is the highest representation of that particular plant. Therefore, that must be the medicinal part of it. And a plant that has such a showy flower as this, and considering that oftentimes the flower is the medicinal part, it's understandable that we would think, oh, with a feverfew, we're definitely going to be using those flowers because look at them. That's, of course, the medicine. But it isn't. The medicine is in the leaf. So the leaf has the highest concentration. And you do want to be cautious when using the leaf, making the won't grow here too hot. Teresa, remind me of where you live, because you're saying too hot. It's like, I'm sorry, do you remember where I live, Teresa? And we have so many things that won't grow here because it's too hot and too dry, but I think I can out-heat you, Teresa. And I think that you should grow it because it is just a great little grower. The thing about feverfew, it's very anti-inflammatory, and it's good to use as a wide spectrum anti-inflammatory. It's good to have around if you just need something to reduce inflammatory responses in the body. It tends to be particularly beneficial for migraines, but it's good across the board. Traditionally, they would take the leaves, and so this comes from English traditional usage. It may be used in other traditions. I know of it from that lineage. So when I speak of it, it's generally from that lineage. If you know of different lineages, I'd love to hear about it. It's just understanding that's my lineage. So a very traditional way of using it would be to take a piece of bread and you butter it. And then you put a slice of a leaf of feverfew there, and you take another slice of buttered bread and you sandwich it in between there and you eat it that way. Because the buttered bread sort of coats the mouth. Because if you just nom on a slice of, I keep on saying slice, and what I mean is leaf. We're not slicing up the plant, well, we are. On a leaf of feverfew, it will often cause some ulceration of the tissue. It's irritating to the mucous membranes of the mouth. So as people were using, they're like, well, yeah, okay, my migraine is better, but my mouth is all, covered in pustules. So over time, we figure how to use it. Another very good way of using it is to dry it and use it in a tea, as Kat was saying, and also to use it as a tincture. It's very effective as a tincture, and the irritating compounds tend to degrade with drying and processing, but it does not degrade the sesquiterpenes. You couldn't get it to grow. Maybe the seeds were old. Teresa, if you text me or contact me, I'll give you seeds because I've got lots of plants and so I've got lots of seeds. I'm happy to send you some if you want to try. So feverfew, great plant to grow. A lot of people misidentify this as German chamomile. Right. And so we constantly have people coming into our garden and saying, oh, look at the chamomile. We do have chamomile growing there. We have the Roman chamomile growing in our garden right now. It's very sad because it's end of summer and it's just not happy at the end of summer. It's really happy in the spring. But it grows only disc flowers and no ray flowers. And with the Roman chamomile, it is the foliage that's the aromatic part and not the flower. So you can see that growing down there. But this, if we did have German chamomile growing, one of the ways that you can identify German chamomile versus feverfew, because they are very, very, very similar, is that the German chamomile the flowers start closed. And so the ray flowers, the white little ones, the petals, the ray flowers are reflexed up. And as it opens up, they reflex backwards and they'll start to reflex all the way backwards and down, where you'll never see that in feverfew. Even when feverfew gets old, the ray flowers are always straight out to the side. Right. And so that's one. And then the other one, of course, is if you crush this and smell it, it doesn't smell like chamomile. Right. But if you're just getting over COVID and you have lost your sense of smell, and how the hell am I going to identify this chamomile? There you go. So I'll pass around the feverfew for you. So that is one of the plants of our Asteraceae garden. Now, two other related plants. Of course, we can't talk about Asteraceae family plants without talking about dandelion. And a lot of people ask us when they come into the apothecary, they'll ask about dandelion, what kinds of dandelion do we have? And we have leaf and we have root. People will ask if we have flower. And no, we do not have flour. And I encourage all of you to try this. If you take a dandelion flower and dry it, what happens is evolutionary imperative kicks in and the plant says, I've just been plucked. In fact, there are physiological processes, there's enzymatic actions going on right now in this plant because it has been plucked. And so it's been told, you're dead now, and the hope that you have of passing on your genetic information is to go into seed. And so by the end of the day today, this flower will turn into the dandelion puffball, right, of seeds. You cannot dry dandelion flowers. If you try dandelion flowers, what you get is a whole container full, whatever you were putting your flowers on, of dandelion puffballs. And if you do that in your car, which the first time that I tried this, the car is my favorite place to dry my plants. I love drying plants in the car. It's a very evenly hot, very low moisture. You can maintain the internal temperatures pretty readily, and you can dry things just really quickly. And then your car kind of smells like plants. It's a great thing to do. But the first time I did it with dandelion flowers, exactly what you're thinking happened. And so I filled the whole back. It was in the spring. I filled the whole back I laid down a sheet, and then I laid down the flowers, and then I put the sheet over it so you don't have direct sun. And so I was really looking forward to that. And so I did it all and came in after a couple of hours and pulled back the sheet. And I pulled back the sheet. Of course, that is the movement, the appropriate movement there, because yeah, it filled my car with dandelion flowers. So, number one, if you want to use dandelions medicinally, we don't generally use the flowers. However, the flowers are often used for like breast compresses, breast oils, for fibrocystic breasts, or generally just kind of breast tenderness and swelling, as a lymphatic. I think there are better lymphatics, certainly more easy to grab lymphatics, but dandelion flowers are abundant and free, and it's dandelion. Lots of people just have an affinity for dandelion and want to use it. So infusing it into oil as a fresh plant is a great way to do that, with all of the associated cautions about making fresh plant oils, because you're introducing water in with the oil, and you can have botulism and other anaerobic microbes growing in that oil. Y'all are chatting here. My grandson and daughter abuse feverfew, won't grow. Southwest Georgia. Oh, yeah, okay. Dandies are so smart. They are so smart. So a lot of people misidentify lots of other plants for dandelions. We've talked about this a little bit in class, so I'm not going to go into it too quickly, but I do want to just point out that if you see a plant that has this little yellow flower, this is a really common floral structure in Asteraceae family plants. In fact, this is sometimes called it's often called a DYC, a C for the old family name of Compositae. Damned yellow compositaes. Botanists call them DYCs because there's so many plants of this family that make this, that when people are like, well, what's that plant? What's that plant? What's that plant? They're like, I don't know. It's a DYC. It is yet another of the hundreds of plants in this family that make this structure of flowers. But it's only dandelion that makes this on a single stalk. So if you have one flower on a single stalk with a basal rosette of leaves, you have dandelion. If you have multiple flowers growing off of your stalk, you have other things, and you may not have that. One of the other things that you will have is one of the plants that's really gone to flower, and I really need to cut it back. I keep it because I occasionally have people who ask for this plant, and while we have it dried in our apothecary, it really is better fresh, but it is also one of the most common weeds. Does anyone recognize this one? It's in full flower right now, so it looks very different than it often does.
Wild lettuce?
Yeah, it's wild lettuce. Yeah. So this is wild lettuce, another plant of the Asteraceae family. So this is the ancestor of all of the lettuces. Lettuces are cultivars of this plant, where we've selected for plants that have very delicate, flavorful leaves and don't have really tough, bitter leaves, and have reduced completely the sesquiterpene content in lettuce in the grocery store. But this is our very common weed, wild lettuce. And in wild lettuce, it is the latex in the stalk that is the medicinal part of the plant. This one is dried out since I plucked it. Because it is somewhat woody. You can see that the stem, this is actually a poor choice that I made of stem because it's not green, it's more woody. You'll see it as I pass it around. And so if you're looking for what I was about to show you, which I'll still show you, it's just not going to be as abundant, you wouldn't produce this one. But when the plant is in flower, oftentimes the concentration of sesquiterpene is higher. And this is why, by the way, if you ever grow lettuce, you always want to be careful to eat your lettuce before it bolts, before it goes into flower. Because as soon as it goes into flower, the flavor of the leaves changes and it becomes considerably more bitter because the sesquiterpene content increases. It becomes more medicinal. You actually have, if you let your romaine lettuce bolt and go to seed and you eat that, you'll actually have medicine that's a little bit closer to this wild lettuce. But wild lettuce will produce a very high amount of a latex, a white, sticky, thick, rubber-like compound called lactucarium. And lactucarium is a very strong sedative, a very, very strong sedative. So wild lettuce is very bitter because sesquiterpenes are bitter, but the sesquiterpenes here are medicinal and yeah, very strong sedatives. So you can make a tincture of wild lettuce and capture all of those. It is one of the most abundant of the weeds. We're generally fighting wild lettuce, trying to keep it out of our gardens. I've been pulling mine because they're done for the year. Yeah, I know. I always have it around to make medicine. It's a very good pain medicine. So I keep meaning to make medicine for pain for animals. Animals beat you to it. Yeah. Yeah, it's a very good pain medicine. It's very good sedative medicine. It's good to have around for sleep, for pain, for kind of reactivity when you just need something to quiet down the nerves. And it's free. But you don't want to make a tea out of this. The chemistry of latex it's not water soluble, which is why when you collect it off of the plants, if you break a plant, as I was going to try to do to you to show you what I was talking about, it'll this thick white sticky latex will collect where you've broken it, and you can collect that and roll it around. You can make a little rubber ball because it's latex. Latex is a chemical name for a chemical structure, and that is a rubber-like compound. When you're thinking of latex gloves, that's what it is. And so you can see that latex, being the therapeutic compound in here, isn't going to be soluble in water because you can't dissolve latex in water. Latex is notorious for not being soluble in water, right? So this isn't, when people make wild lettuce as a medicine, doesn't make sense chemically. If you're looking for the lactucarium, which is the primary chemistry, it's not going to come out in your tea. What is going to come out is other sesquiterpenes. It's going to be incredibly bitter, horribly, horribly, horribly bitter, but it's not going to be medicinally active other than that. So it tastes nasty and you don't even get what you're looking for. It's just not a good idea. A tincture is a great idea, right? A tincture is a great idea.
Could you just eat the little ball?
You can, absolutely. You can, yeah, you can just eat it. When I was in herb school, one of the lessons that we had is we had to go and find one. They grow up, you'll see them out there, grow up to be like this tall. And you sit next to it and you had to cut it down. You cut down every 3 or 4 inches to expose new tissue. And then the lactucarium collects there. And then you collect it off, you scrape it off. And then you cut off another inch or so and sit there. You have a book as part of the tools that you use when you're taking this, because you're just going to sit there and read and wait for the lactucarium to collect on that cut surface. And then you scrape that off and you cut down another inch and you wait for 10 minutes and you scrape that off and you cut down until you have reduced the plant down to the nuts on the ground. And what you have is a little jar full of these little balls of snot. They look like gray, nasty little balls of snot that you've collected off of something. They're kind of gray, brown. It's nasty looking little collection. And then you can take that and you could absolutely just roll them up and put them in your mouth and swallow them. Very, very bitter, horrible. What is generally made is tincture of lactucarium. And then you just take that and dissolve it in alcohol. You take 80% alcohol, pour that over that in a 1-to-2 ratio, and it's just going to dissolve the lactocarrium. We're not looking at extraction from a plant because there's no plant. We extracted the plant when we were scooping off that latex. That was the extraction method. Now we're just dissolving it into a carrier, and that carrier is the alcohol. And that's called tincture of lactocarium. That is an official medicine of the United States Pharmacopoeia in the early 1920s, and a very, very strong sedative. That is why lettuce is sometimes called opium lettuce. This is not opiates. They're not chemically related to opiates. Opiates come from the Papaveraceae family, not the Asteraceae family. But yeah, people, and it's not as strong as, it's not opium. You know, that's just, yes.
Write down lactocarium.
Yes. And the the genus name of lettuce is Lactuca. And of course, the root word lact, right? Milk, because when you break it, it secretes a milky substance, this milky latex. All right. Another plant of the Asteraceae family, and then we'll be finished with the Asteraceae, is this one. And this is very different than the other ones. And while we don't use it as medicine specifically because it's a flower, I do like to point it out. Actually, I'm going to keep this for folks online. This, and y'all might not recognize this because yours looks very different. This is our native mugwort. So this is Artemisia douglassiana. This is California native mugwort. And that's the leaf of California native mugwort. It does divide. It gets a little bit toothed, but it doesn't have the really fine toothing that folks who have the Artemisia vulgaris growing around them, which is most of the rest of the United States and other countries that are in here. Your mugwort looks very different. Your mugwort also smells very different, and it tastes very different. Hello from Chattanooga, Tennessee. Oh, well, thank you so much, Justin. Welcome. Seven Song, does a repeat wash to remove the lactocarium by repeatedly washing new wild lettuce in the same alcohol using a blender to speed up the process? Yes, Terry. And he actually had an old method of making. He changed his tincture of lactocarium. But yes, if you go to Seven Song's website, which is one of the best websites. He is one of the most incredibly generous herbalists around. He's amazing. He's an excellent herbalist. Is this website the number 7 song, or is it written out? That's the mugwort you have in your garden. Danielle, where do you live? I think I'd remember where you folks live. What was I going to write down? 7. Oh, it might be 7song.com. I think it is. Whole bunch of information there, so much information there, and he has a great little discussion on lactocarium. But what he used to do is he used to reduce it. So he would make the extraction, and then he would reduce it down, put it over heat, and then drive off the alcohol and reduce it down until it was really thick and sticky and black as a like a tarry substance. And then take that, and he's taken that out. He doesn't talk about Portland, Oregon. Okay, I could absolutely see, or yes, his school is the Northeast School of Botanical Medicine is Seven Song's school. But I think you can just go to 7song.com and get there. But yeah, Northeast School of Botanical Medicines. Thank you, Terry. You are so awesome. All right. So, and Teresa said that she's mixed the wild lettuce with white willow bark as a pain reliever. Yeah, great. Okay, so what I wanted to point out with the whatever I just gave you, with the mugwort flowers, is that when plants go to flower, oftentimes the essential oil content of the plant tends to peak at that time. One of the theories is that that's a signaling agent to pollinators, right? It's one of the many different chemical messages that the plant is sending out saying, come here and get some, right? But when the essential oil is part of our medicine of the plant, we can really use that. And I brought also some mint to also just remind us of that when we are using a plant that has a high amount of essential oils, and the essential oils are part of the medicine, if we can harvest a plant, especially right when it just starts coming into flower, we can really maximize that essential oil content. What I want to point out here with this one is that with the essential oils of our mugwort, has a problematically high level of a toxic compound in it that makes it something that we can use. We just want to be really respectful of it. And you can tell through your organoleptic testing, using your organs of sense to check for the presence or absence of chemistry in plants. And you're going to do this with some of the mugwort that you have around. If you don't, let me give you some more over there. Pass around leaves of the mugwort. I don't want you just crush up the leaves. You have some behind you. Crush up the leaf and smell it. Now, if you've used Artemisia vulgaris has almost no aromatics. It's very, very, very faint, very, very light. And Artemisia douglassiana is really strong. It's a very, very aromatic, way up there, very much like the Artemisias. I generally tend to be lumped into a couple of different categories. We have mugworts, and we have sagebrushes, and we have the wormwoods, right? And there's a whole bunch of kind of different plants within those. But the wormwoods and the sagebrushes tend to be the most aromatic, the highest amount of volatile oils. So this is very much like one of those. It's so high in the essential oils. And one of the things you want to be mindful of is that the essential oils of Artemisia plants specifically contain a compound, we've talked about it in class a number of times before, contains a compound called thujone. So thujone comes from the root word thuja, which is cedar. So this is associated with thuja, the cedar. It is really intense, Danielle, exactly. Yeah, so there's a whole lot of different there's a whole lot of different species of mugwort, right? There's not just the two. There's a lot of different ones. So it's likely that you may have just another different cultivar in New York. I've never been to your side of the country, so I have no idea what grows there. But we do have folks that are on your side, so they'll probably help you out with that. But yeah, if you have and you don't have to know the species to apply this, but this is really helpful information for you, particularly because you don't know the species. There's a characteristic smell here, right? You can smell the smell of mugwort, and it's very similar to the smell of sage, right? The true sages, salvias. So we have salvias, and we have thuja, and we have the artemisias. Lots of other plants too, but these are kind of the big ones. All contain really high amounts of this thujone. And we know that they contain this thujone because thujone is that very distinctive smell that smells like sage. So when you smell that very distinct sage, it has a sage-like smell. I don't know what, but it's like sagey. That is oftentimes what you're smelling is thujone. And if you smell these different plants, and it's helpful to do so because it's helpful to implant that identifier of this is what thujone smells like, because thujone is neurotoxic. Now, it's not immediately neurotoxic. It's not going to destroy your brain if you drink a cup of mugwort tea. But if your mugwort is really aromatic, and this is where I'm going with this, if you have a mugwort that has a really strong, intense smell, then that mugwort is a mugwort that you need to use much more respectfully than if your mugwort has a very mild smell like the Artemisia vulgaris. You can tell organoleptically that the content of thujone is considerably lower in most Artemisia vulgarises than in many other species like our Artemisia douglassiana because you can smell it. So it's a good plant to use for burning, yes. So as not to use sages, white sages, absolutely. And all of the other sages are good. The reason why white sage is used for burning, generally just looking at it chemically, and this is how people, this is the science that indigenous people, that Tongva people and Chumash people and people of this region used because they were scientists as they were using their plants. There's a reason why white sage is used for burning because the resin content is higher. And when you have a resinous plant, it's going to hold a burn for a longer period of time. Of all of the different species, there's a lot of different species of native salvias that also they smell really lovely when burned, but it's the white sage that you're able to actually smudge appropriately like that. So if you're using white sage, and the problem with that is then white sage has just a really limited distribution range, and people have been going up and pulling it out and causing real problems with it, which is why we don't burn sage, why we do look for alternatives in burning sage. But yeah, absolutely. It's why we don't want to use this internally in large amounts. Small amounts are fine. You just want to be mindful and respectful of it. And that goes for sage too. So sage also has a really high amount of thujone. And for this, we're just talking about the garden sage. We're talking about culinary sage. We're talking about the sage that you use to make your stuffing. It's just that generally, if we're using sage as a seasoning, we're using it in lower amounts. If we use it in very large amounts, as we as herbalists often do, we're going to be starting to increase our exposure to these compounds. Now, the other thing is that thujone is poorly soluble in water. So if you're making a water extract, if you're making a tea, you're not going to have as much exposure to it as if you are burning it and inhaling the smoke, if you're smoking it, if you're making a tincture, if you're making an essential oil. This is one of the reasons why it's hard to find essential oil of sage, and it's hard to find essential oil of mugwort and all of the artemisias, because when you distill those, you are really concentrating thujone. Essential oil of sage, essential oil of thujone, essential oil of cedar are really toxic, and you can get transdermal absorption of this thujone through your skin and bloodstream. They smell wonderful. You can think, oh, white sage essential oil in a lotion, I'm going to just slather that all over my body. As you do so, you are slathering high concentration of thujone all over your body, and your nervous system may be able to deal with that, because you may have just a robust and resilient nervous system. But if you don't have a robust and resilient nervous system, maybe hold practices like that for ritual uses, for occasional uses, just being mindful about them. I'm not saying that you can't use it. And of course, your body is your own to do whatever you like. But if you're going to do that, these are the repercussions. And if you have mugwort or any artemisias growing around you, this is the way that you can test for that chemistry. And I'll answer your question. Just one more thing is that when we inhale smoke, when we smoke plants, inhalation of compounds goes into the lungs. So we have gas exchange in the lungs, right? That's how we take in oxygen and how we lose carbon dioxide. Because this is a very effective process right here, the gas exchange, that is one of the best ways to get stuff into your bloodstream, second only to intravenous injection. So if you're smoking things like mugwort or sage, you're getting those concentrated, extracted, and then going right into your bloodstream, not even allowing the liver to protect us as it would be able to if we were taking orally. So really, you want to be mindful about smoking with that. And then, thujone is likely to affect animals in the same way. In fact, many animals it would be particularly problematic for someone like cats. Cats would be really, really, really sensitive to this, because cats don't use plants cats don't have evolutionary. Sorry, I've started like 5 different sentences there. Evolutionarily, cats do not eat aromatic plants. Generally, cats stay away from aromatic things. They don't like them. Sometimes they'll eat prey that is eaten an aromatic plant, so that's how they would be exposed to it. But a cat is not going to go and start nomming on something that is aromatic, except for the nipetolactone kind of things, right? Catnip and valerian and weird things like that. And also just weird things. Some cats are just weird, and they're just going to be cats, and they're going to be weird. But generally, cats don't. And so an important part of that is evolutionarily, their kidneys. The kidneys are responsible for metabolizing essential oils. The kidneys never developed the ability to process essential oils the way that our kidneys do. And so a cat's kidneys are really, really, really sensitive to the presence of essential oil-based compounds, monoterpenes, and related compounds. And so they're going to be particularly reactive to them in a way that a scavenger like a dog or an omnivore like a human is not going to be, right? So that so considering the animal that it's exposed to. That being said, someone like a rabbit or someone who would likely be nibbling on that, eats a lot of vegetables, would be less possibly reactive to it. Using mugwort for parasites. So a lot of the artemisias are used for parasites, classically wormwood, right? It's called wormwood because it's anti-parasitic, because it's used to fight parasites. I have a lot to say about parasites and the use of herbs for that, and I'm not going to go into that right now because that's a whole big old thing down there. But what I do want to say is that a lot of people use language of parasites to give a message that we are dirty. You're dirty, 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 and you need to be cleaned. You need to be cleansed. You are dirty. Lots of cleanses, that language and the messaging of cleanses that are out there have this underlying thing. You are dirty and you need to be cleansed. And there's a whole bunch of problems around that kind of concept, especially in how it's just applied to our bodies. The other thing is that there are many problems with our food supply and our water supply and our environment here in this country. There's a lot of problems. One of the things that we pretty much have under control is parasites. There are absolutely parasites that people have, really common parasites. But the big ones, generally the ones that people are talking about when they're hawking things as an anti-parasites, we generally just don't have, thankfully. And when we do have them, we have really good medicines for fighting them. When we use things like wormwood, the reason why wormwood is really effective for certain types of parasites and not all of them is because it's poisonous. And you're taking something poisonous to kill something in your body because you have an organism in your body and you're trying to kill that organism. And if you take something to kill an agent, it's because that thing is poisonous. Right? So there's a certain amount of toxicity with most of the anti-parasitic herbs that are out there. If you're using cassia bark or wormwood or black walnut, or there's varying levels of toxicity associated with them. But a lot of the formulas out there are really, really, really toxic and really purgative. They're really strong on the guts. They're really and they're unnecessary because most people don't have parasite problems. Most people have digestive problems, and it can feel sometimes like, oh, maybe that's a parasite causing all that bloating and gas and gurgling and all of that. No, it's usually there's just digestive problems. So think about that. If you're going on an anti-parasite cleanse, you're taking things that are going to be inherently toxic. And is your body able to do that? Probably not. Yes.
So just actually building on that, what else is Fuzhou useful for? Like you mentioned that it's toxic, it's poisonous. So as besides parasites, are there
well, the plants have really lovely effects. The plants are Fuzhou is an anti-parasitic compound. It is, as an aromatic compound, it's strongly antifungal. It's strongly antimicrobial. And so you can use that if you make an infused oil, for example, of artemisia, any of the aromatic artemisias, an infused oil or a tincture or a vinegar extract of those. Those are really good as antifungal treatments. Not an oil. Oils aren't good for fungal treatments because they trap moisture in there. But a vinegar extract of those are really, really good, or a tincture. For topical use, they're great. Yeah, you do get in a high concentration, you can get transdermal absorption because monoterpenes are small molecular structure, and so they can be absorbed very readily through the skin. But if you're using whole plants in baths or compresses and all of that, it's really just when you're distilling, when you're concentrating, when you're extracting them, making them stronger and stronger and stronger, and then using them internally in large amounts. That's just it. It's the dosage and the form that makes the poison. Usually the way that people are using them is good. And oftentimes, if you take those types of plants, we're going to go on to a couple of the other flowers before we have to start. If you taste this wormwood, if you nibble on a piece of this leaf, and I invite you to if you'd like to, it will tell you in no uncertain terms, I am not for nibbling on. This is not, you can't just put me into a soup or a salad and just nom large amounts of me. It tells you that it's strong medicine. And so oftentimes we do want to like pay attention to that. If the plant is telling us, wow, this is not a happy, jolly plant that we want to use. Maybe we want to like progress slowly. And if you smell this smell, familiarize yourself with that, then you can tell if a plant smells like that, you're going to want to say, hey, I'm just going to hold off for a moment here before I make a pesto with this, which one of my students did once. We had a 6-week-long class on women's health, and we talked about sage so much because sage is a great plant as a phytoestrogen and all of these things. So she had gone out and wildcrafted 6 different species of sage and made a fresh pesto with them with pine nuts and olive oil and garlic, and she brought this into our last class potluck, and I'm like, it's a pesto. There's like Thujone Central, such a high concentration, you're eating it, right? So it's not even extracted, you're ingesting, it's 100% absorption. I have to have a bite of it because she made this, and I just have to be kind and have a bite of what she brought to the potluck. So I took some, and it was so good. It was so good. I could not stop eating it. It was really, really good. And so I just considered, you know what? This is going to be my Thujone exposure. I have a relatively healthy nervous system, did at that time. I can like handle this. And you just give, and this is what you do. Because also you're going to want to do a mugwort bath, or you're going to want to do a steam with it, or you're going to want to smoke it, or you're going to want to make an incense with it, or a massage oil, or whatever you're going to do. You're going to want to use it, and you can, and you should. Just be aware that you're asking your nervous system to kind of be exposed to something that's not happy with it. And so give your nervous system just a little bit extra love, right? That's what we do when we're doing anything like that. We drink some coffee and we give our nervous system some extra love. We, stay up late until 2 a.m. We give our nervous system some extra love. That's the big lesson that I want you to take home from this. Not these plants are toxic and you should stay away from them. These plants are strong and you should have respect for them because they'll kick your butt if you don't. Yes. Kind of like Renee.
So smoking it and like even just saging, when you're burning it, aren't you essentially destroying most of that anyway?
No, you are not destroying it. A lot of things are destroyed in smoking, yeah. And that's one of the important things about smoking. A lot of people just kind of assume that if chemistry is here, then after you smoke it, the chemistry is there. No, so much stuff is degraded in smoking. But monoterpenes are really stable, and that's why when you burn them, you can smell them afterwards. You burn them, you're like, oh, that smells really. It smells like what it is, right? So if it's destroyed in the burning, generally there'll be a change, and you're like, oh, that didn't work. You know what is a good example of that is orange peel. Orange peel has a beautiful fragrance of the essential oils, the citral and citronellol and those D-limonene, all of those compounds they are really unstable in heat. And if you try to burn orange peel as a part of an incense, so it has like an orange scent. No, it doesn't. It smells like just burning plant material because it completely degrades those compounds. So yes, you do want to pay attention to that. Thujone is stable in them, so you are going to be extracting it. Your nervous system needs lots of love. All of us do. It was Thujone pesto. Yeah. Okay. Couple more plants and then we'll finish up. I just wanted to show you this flower because this is such an adorable flower and it's the first year that it's happened. Isn't that the cutest little thing? Okay, so I want y'all to take a leaf from here and nibble on it. And we'll get back to that in a second. This I'm going to show you really quick. This is from our moringa tree. So we have a moringa tree growing right there. Lots of people use the moringa leaves. Moringa grows really rapidly. It grows in a wide range of environments. The leaves are really nourishing. The seeds are really high in protein, really high in minerals, high in fatty acids, very nourishing, a really good food and nutrient source, very rapid growing. I just bought the flowers because the flowers are really cute. We don't use the flowers to my knowledge, but the seeds we do. And so the seed pods are starting to form. So when y'all go out, go look at the tree and you'll see these long like beans forming. They're getting really, really, really long. Every year people start to steal them before they ripen so that I can get some of the seeds and plant them. But hope springs eternal, maybe this year.
If you ever need seeds, let me know.
Yeah. Okay. Our last flower is this one, and this is this is a wild carrot that has gone into seed. So we have wild carrot growing out there that's in full flower, and it is an umbel. It's a white flower, looks very much like a yarrow flower. In fact, yarrow and the wild carrot are growing next to each other, and so it's sometimes hard to tell them apart. I don't have any yarrow. I would totally bring yarrow, except that this weekend I was with students and I harvested all of the yarrow flowers for them. But wild carrot, this is the ancestor of carrots in exactly the same way as this is the ancestor of lettuce. So I have lettuce and carrots here. Wild carrot, this seed is a uterine tonic. It is a stimulant to the endometrium, the lining of the uterus. And so wild carrot seeds are actually used for a lot of different things. We distill these because the distilled essential oil is really healing and soothing to the skin. So you'll see carrot oil, you'll see carrot seed oil. Carrot seed oil is the distilled oil of this. You'll also see carrot oil, which is oftentimes an infused oil of carrot. We're not talking about that, but the carrot seed oil. But the primary reason we use this is because it is a uterine tonic, because it stimulates. Yes, Queen Anne's lace. Oh, actually, no. Looks like hemlock too. Okay, now Teresa and Tuco just like ruined our speedy ending for this. Show you this. Hold on, come on.
Is that moringa? What is that one? I don't know. I was just asking if anybody
Moringa
knows.
tree?
Did she say it was
This
moringa? No, this isn't the moringa. The moringa is this one. No.
Yeah.
I don't know about this one. Looks
I
like
liked the way it tasted.
it's very
Kind of piney.
Right.
Yeah.
But really, I'm so glad that you said it. It's such an important issue when we're talking about this family. Hi, baby. I did. This is a little, I just brought in a Phidippus audax, a bold jumping spider. Hello, my friend. A little baby. I know. I am so sorry. I know. You know what? It's totally okay for you to come onto my hand. I know. I understand. But I'll take you outside. Hi. Do you want to come up? I know. Okay. I'll just leave you alone. Okay. All right. You see a little baby.
It's on there.
I have a Phidippus audax right there.
what? That's great.
Yeah. In fact, this is all black work. The only color that I have in my whole is right here. I'll show you folks. Right there, you'll see a little green because Phidippus audax has chelicerae. Chelicerae are modified hands. They look like fangs. People who are afraid of spiders will see them and think, "Oh my God, they're fangs." They're not. They're little paws. They're little blue paws, but they have these adorable little blue paws, and it just helps get food into their mouth. But they're bright green, neon green, blue, teal color. They're the most beautiful color. So I just have that little chelicerae in there. Anyway, you're adorable, and I love you, and you're right there. I'm so sorry. You think I get distracted by dogs? Just wait until spiders come along. I'm like, okay. Getting back to your very important points. Oh, you love jumping spoons. I know they are the best. Okay, this is Queen Anne's lace. Queen Anne's lace, named for Queen Anne. Queen Anne was one of the wives of Henry VIII who had her neck cut off. And this plant is said, if you look in the center of Queen Anne's lace, you'll see a little drop of blood. There's a little red. This one is very faintly pink, little red drop. So that's one of the identifying characteristics of Queen Anne's lace. It's important to identify plants properly because, as one of you said, Tuco, it was you, this family, this is the Apiaceae family. This is the parsley carrot family. Also contains poison hemlock, a lookalike. Hi, friend. A lookalike, and it grows abundantly here. And it's very easy to misidentify them. By the way, Queen Anne's lace doesn't grow here. You're very unlikely to find this growing here. It grows in our garden because I planted it here. So You can look for the drop of blood. It's there, and sometimes it's not. We have some of our flowers there that you won't see that. This could be a hemlock flower because it looks very much the same. This could be a hemlock leaf because it looks very much the same. So if you just saw this, what you should do is think, dang, that looks like hemlock. I'm going to stay away from that until I got a proper identification. When you come closer to hemlock, oftentimes you'll see what are some of the identifying characteristics of, there you go, Tuco, the queen has hairy legs. That's one of the first things you want to look for. The queen has hairy legs. If you look at the stem, there's going to be hairs on the stem. They're not there on hemlock. Hemlock has smooth legs. So the queen has hairy legs, one of my favorite identifiers, yes. The other thing is that hemlock oftentimes has purple blotches along the stem. So if you see these purple blotches, but it may not be on that particular plant. And it's not when they're very immature. So, and then you also, there's a very rank smell to the hemlock, where Queen Anne's lace has sort of a celery, carrot, parsley, typical smell to it. Did you just see something go over? Did you just see the spider crawl over the, there was just on the recording, the spider just crawled over. That was the spider Terry just. Yeah, it's on the screen. That is so funny. Yeah. Okay. So Queen Anne's lace. When the flower is new, it is an umbel like that. As it goes into seed, it reflexes upward. So this is how you can tell. Sometimes when the plant is new, you can't tell, is it coming into flower or is it going out of flower into seed? And one of the ways that you can tell, because it looks somewhat like this when it's coming into it, but it's reflexed downward. So the spider just wanted to say hi to you. It thought I should say hi to you folks. So we take the seed, and the seed is stimulating to the uterine lining. The seed stimulates the endometrium of the uterus. So it moves energy in the endometrium, and it is therefore used as a birth control agent. Many people have had very good results using it as a birth control agent. I'm not sure. I'm 100% sure I would not trust it by itself as a birth control agent unless I was like, I'm fine having a baby. I'll try this and we'll just kind of see what happens. But that being said, there's an herbalist called Robin Rose Bennett. Those who use it are often called mothers. Can't grow it along with carrots. They cross-pollinate. Oh, that makes sense. And then your carrots would be, woody and sad and sad. Yeah, so important to know. Jim McDonald's wife was using it as a Jim McDonald is a brilliant herbalist in Michigan. His wife was using it as a birth control thing. I think they were also using barrier method, but using that. They had kids. They didn't want kids. We're okay if there was another one coming up. It seemed to be a very effective birth control effect. And as soon as she stopped, they got pregnant again and they were happy. They wanted to do that. The interesting thing about it, and I think one of the most notable things about it, is there is no hormonal aspect to it. The effect is stimulation of the uterine lining. It is not changing the hormones of the body. It's just working on the endometrium. So it's very good for people who cannot or don't want to affect hormones. There's a lot of different reasons why people, Robin's your friend and previous teacher. Oh, Robin is brilliant. Yeah. She's just a brilliant herbalist, a brilliant witch. She's just awesome. So oftentimes people will grind it. When you harvest it, it's got, I'll send this around so y'all can see it. It's covered with these little hairs, seed dispersal mechanism. Plant's going to do this to disperse the plant widely. So you have to clean it. You have to winnow off the stuff there, but winnow the hairs. And tinctures are often used, or just the ground seeds added to your food. You all have probably a lot more exposure to it. It really is not an abundant plant here. It is a very common weed in so many other places, but it is too hot and dry here. And that is the thing, Brianna, is that it could, what Jim's wife, who I'm blanking on her name, Jim's wife felt like it did help to increase fertility because she felt like it increased the health of the endometrium, stimulating blood flow, stimulating kind of activity, making the endometrium a place that was kind of active and moving, increasing the amount of blood and the amount of nutrients to the endometrium. She felt that as soon as she stopped taking it, the endometrium was healthier than it had been before and was therefore more appropriate for pregnancy. And because there was no change that it needed a shift in hormones, it was like boom right there. Yeah, so I grow the Queen Anne's lace because a lot of people like to play with the idea of the using it as a birth control agent. It is also often used as an abortifacient. It's used oftentimes for people who want to end a pregnancy. I don't know how effective it is for that. I know that people use it. I just think that because it's not as strong a uterine stimulant, I don't think it's as effective as some of the other plants that are used as abortifacients. But other people have different experiences with that. And so, look to other people for that info. It grows good here and it's hot. So yeah, you should be able to grow it. Hello, baby. Here's the spider. Let's see if y'all can see the spider again. They're right. Right. Oh no. Can you go over to the side so they can see you again? Go right there. Go over. Go. I know. No. Oh, hop down underneath. Okay. Doesn't want to see you. Doesn't want to say hi. Don't take it personally. All right. So would you decoct the seeds? I wouldn't decoct the seeds because I think that some of the medicine of it. There's a baby. See, there's a baby right there. Say hi. Say hi, baby. There's a little baby. Isn't it cute? It's just adorable, little tiny little baby. Okay. No, you can't decoct the seeds. So whenever you're working with seeds, and I'll finish right here because it's noon. Whenever you're working with seeds, especially aromatic seeds, and carrot seeds are an aromatic seed, seeds are fatty. Seeds are where we get most oils. The oils that aren't from, well, fats are generally from animals. Oils are generally from seeds, occasionally from fruits like coconuts and avocados and palm fruit and things like that. But largely, we get oils from seeds. Oh, you screamed out loud with you. I'm so sorry. I should realize, I'm really sorry, Tuco. I should remember that other people don't feel the way that I do about spiders. That was not fair. I am sorry that you screamed. Yeah. Oh, his wife's name is Stephanie. Thank you. Not the spider's wife isn't Stephanie. Oh, no, in a good way. Oh, okay. You screamed with adorableness. Got it. Okay. But nonetheless, I should remember that. I'm sorry. I should at least give a heads up. So maybe I'll put it in. I'm not going to put anything in the video description. Who am I kidding that I'm going to put something in the video description? Ha, you're lucky that you're getting a video at all from me. No. They'll just, I think I did warn you. Did I give you a warning before I did it? I think I did. I think I had enough warning. Okay. Anyway, seeds, oftentimes not soluble in water because they generally have a lot of fats in them because that's what seeds do. Seeds like to produce fats. And a lot of the chemistry of seeds has to do with those fats or fatty compounds like sterols, right? So, for various different reasons. Generally, if you're looking to seed, you want to ingest it or make a tincture out of it. The exception for that would be like the really aromatic seeds like fennel, right? But mostly, yeah, we're just eating them. All right, there you go. There's my.
Tell us what the little bottle brush looking one with the needle.
Oh, I didn't tell you. I didn't tell you what this one was. Do you have any guesses from the taste? Did it taste yummy? When I tell you, you're going to go, yeah, this is tea tree.
Oh.
I knew you were going to make that sound. Yeah. So this is our tea tree. We had Ben Fisher. Ben Fisher's Long Beach Holistic Tree, one of our favorite arborists here in town. Ben started 500 trees like a couple years ago, and made it his mission to gorilla plant 500 trees around here. And so this was number one of his 500. This was the first of his trees. He brought it to me and said, it brought a truck of trees over and said, pick a tree, any tree. And so, yeah, this was mine. So tea tree looks like an anime protagonist animal companion. Yes, it does. Yeah, so tea tree, I can't wait until my students get to distill their first tea tree, because we've distilled like lemongrass because we have so much lemongrass, and we've distilled geranium because we have so much geranium, but I haven't distilled essential oil. Anyway, there you go, folks. Thank you for putting up with our all over the placeness. That's the energy today for me. But I love y'all. So glad you showed up. So glad you showed up. So glad you showed up. Oh, it's great because y'all show up. I will see you next week. Okay. And then we'll have like a more serious, usual, typical, boring class. All right. I love you all. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye. Okay.